The storm came like a beast out of nowhere, rolling, snarling, and tearing through the plains with the kind of fury only the Wild West could conjure. Clint Maddox had seen his share of tempests in these parts, but this one felt different. The air was thick, heavy with electricity, and the prairie grass bent low like it feared what was coming. He'd been sitting at his small ranch house, nursing a cup of coffee and listening to the wind rattle the windows when he realized one of his mares was missing. Her name was Willow, a spirited chestnut who had more fight than most men Clint knew. When the thunder cracked, she must have bolted straight toward the old barn by the ridge. Clint threw on his coat, grabbed a lantern, and rode out into the night. The rain hit him hard, soaking him through as his horse, Buck, trudged through the mud. Lightning flashed in the distance, revealing the outline of that old barn, half fallen, leaning like it might give up at any second. Clint had avoided it for years, ever since it stopped being a shelter for his livestock and became a graveyard for broken tools and forgotten memories. His boots sank deep into the wet earth as he dismounted and approached the door. The hinges groaned when he pushed it open, and the lantern's dim glow cast long, eerie shadows across the warped wooden walls. He called out softly, "Willow. Girl, you in here?" But what answered him wasn't a horse's whinny. It was a faint, trembling voice. "Help, please." Clint froze. His pulse quickened as he lifted the lantern higher, its light cutting across the barn interior. At first, he thought his eyes were deceiving him. There, in the far corner, was a figure. A woman. She was bound to a wooden support beam, wrists tied above her head with coarse rope, her dress soaked and clinging to her as if the storm had tried to drown her. Her hair was dark, tangled, and her eyes, those eyes were wild with desperation. "Untie me," she whispered hoarsely, her lips trembling. Then she said it again, more urgently, "I crave." Clint's breath caught. The words struck him oddly, like they carried more weight than simple pleading. He moved closer, his boots echoing on the creaky floorboards. "Ma'am, what happened to you? Who did this?" Her gaze darted toward the barn door, then back to him. "He'll be back," she said. "He always comes back." Her voice cracked on the last word. Clint knelt beside her, his hands working to loosen the knots. Whoever tied her had done it rough, her wrists were raw and bruised. The smell of rain and sweat filled the air, mingling with the old scent of hay and wood. "You're safe now," he murmured, though deep down, he wasn't sure it was true. As he worked, his lantern flickered, and for a moment, the shadows seemed to move, stretching and twisting across the walls like the barn itself was alive. Outside, the storm roared louder, slamming against the doors. "Who are you?" Clint asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Evelyn," she whispered. Evelyn Hart. The name struck him. He knew it. Everyone in the nearby town did. She was the woman who had come west with her husband 2 years back, the one who never smiled, who rarely spoke, and who always had those dark bruises peeking from under her sleeves. There'd been talk, whispers, but no one had ever dared to ask questions. Clint cut through the last rope, and Evelyn collapsed into his arms, trembling violently. "Easy," he said softly, steadying her. "You're gonna be all right." Her head rested against his chest for a moment before she pulled back, her eyes searching his face. "You shouldn't have come," she breathed. "He'll kill you for this." "Who will?" Before she could answer, a crash of thunder drowned her words. Clint glanced toward the barn door. Something was out there. The horses in the corral were restless, kicking and snorting. Evelyn clutched his arm. "Please, don't let him find me again." Clint felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. The way she said it, there was terror, yes, but something else too. A kind of defiance, as if she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. He nodded, jaw tight. "No one's gonna hurt you. Not while I'm breathing." But even as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that by untying her, he had set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. Something far bigger, and far darker, than either of them could see yet. The lantern flickered again, and the ropes on the ground looked like snakes twisting in the dim light. Outside, the storm screamed, but inside that barn, it was the silence that scared Clint the most. The barn groaned under the force of the wind, every thunderclap making the rafters shudder. Clint held Evelyn steady as she clung to him, her body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. Her wrists were red and swollen from the ropes, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. "He'll come back," she whispered again, eyes darting to the door as though the devil himself might walk through it any second. Clint set the lantern down on an overturned crate and checked the bullets in his revolver. 6, clean and ready. Who's coming, Evelyn? Tell me what's going on. She hesitated, her lips trembling as if each word cost her strength. My husband, James Hart. He's not right in the head. He locked me away. Said I was his sin and his salvation. I ran once before. He found me. This time, she trailed off, her voice breaking. He swore he'd kill anyone who helped me. Clint's jaw clenched. He'd known men like that, cruel ones who thought love was possession. He holstered the gun, glancing toward the heavy wooden doors that shook under the storm's rage. Ain't nobody dyin' tonight, he said quietly. Not on my ranch. Before Evelyn could reply, a sudden bang cracked through the noise of the storm. A gunshot. The sound tore through the barn like lightning, sharp and merciless. Clint instinctively pulled Evelyn down behind a stack of hay bales, his heart hammering. The lantern wobbled but didn't fall. Stay low, he hissed, drawing his revolver. The barn door creaked open slowly, hinges whining under the pressure of the wind. A shadow filled the doorway, a tall man in a soaked black duster, his hat tilted low, rain dripping from its brim. Lightning flashed behind him, outlining his figure in a white glow. The man stepped inside with a calm, deliberate pace, boots thudding against the floorboards. Evelyn, he drawled, voice deep and rough as gravel. You think you can hide from me? You think some rancher's gonna save you? Clint's grip tightened on his revolver, his knuckles white. He peered through the gap in the hay bales, studying the intruder. James Hart. He'd seen the man in town before, always with that cold, controlled smile and the kind of stare that made decent folks uneasy. Evelyn trembled beside him. Her eyes were wide, but there was a flicker of something new there, rage, maybe, or courage. You can't hurt me anymore, she whispered under her breath. James took another step, scanning the shadows. Come out, sweetheart, he called, his tone mocking. You know how this ends. You always come back. You belong to me. Clint's patience snapped. He rose from cover, revolver aimed dead center at James's chest. She ain't yours, he said, his voice low and steady despite the tremor in his gut. James's head tilted, a smile creeping across his face. Well now, this is cute, he sneered. The ranch hand playin' hero. Drop the gun, Clint warned. But James didn't listen. In one fluid motion, he drew his pistol and fired. The shot whizzed past Clint's head, splintering a wooden post. Clint fired back, his bullet grazing James's shoulder. The outlaw staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, he laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that sent chills up Clint's spine. The two men circled, their movements tense and measured. The storm raged outside, rain seeping through the cracks in the roof, dripping down like cold sweat. Evelyn crouched behind the hay, watching, trembling, but her eyes were fixed on James with a strange, burning focus. Clint's gun hand trembled slightly. He hadn't fired in years, not since the last cattle war. But the moment he saw James raise his weapon again, muscle memory took over. He cocked the hammer, finger tightening on the trigger. But Evelyn moved first. She lunged out from behind the hay, grabbing Clint's wrist. No, she hissed. Her eyes blazed. You already saved me. Let me finish this. Before Clint could stop her, she snatched the revolver from his grip. James froze mid-step, shock flickering across his face as Evelyn straightened, aiming the gun squarely at him. Evelyn, he said, suddenly calm. Put it down. You don't have it in you. Lightning flashed again, filling the barn with blinding white light. Evelyn's voice was steady now, her fear replaced by something fierce and final. You don't get to tell me what I have anymore. The gun went off. The echo of the shot was swallowed by thunder. James' heart stumbled backward, eyes wide, before collapsing into the dirt. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain's rhythm filled the silence. Clint stared at the fallen man, then at Evelyn, whose hands shook as she lowered the smoking revolver. Her face was streaked with tears, her breath ragged, but there was relief in her eyes. It's over, she whispered. Finally, it's over. Clint took a step toward her, unsure what to say. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air, mixing with the scent of wet earth and hay. The storm began to ease, its fury fading into soft, distant rumbles. But as Clint looked at Evelyn, at the woman who had just taken her freedom by force, he realized something that sent a tremor through him. The fear was gone from her eyes, yes. But what replaced it was something darker. Something that made him wonder just who, exactly, he had untied in that barn. For a long time, the only sound in the barn was the soft hiss of rain against the roof and the distant rumble of thunder retreating into the hills. Clint's breath came slow and heavy, his revolver still warm in Evelyn's trembling hands. James Hart lay motionless near the doorway, his black duster soaked with rain and blood. The lantern's flame flickered weakly, casting ghost-like shadows that danced across the walls and over his lifeless face. Evelyn stared down at him, her shoulders shaking. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. The gun slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Clint took a careful step forward, his boots crunching over bits of straw and debris. "Evelyn," he said softly, "it's over. You're safe now." But the look she gave him wasn't relief, it was disbelief. Her eyes were wide and distant, as if her mind was still trying to catch up to what her body had just done. "Safe," she repeated, almost to herself. Then she let out a sharp, broken laugh. "I don't even know what that means anymore." Clint wanted to comfort her, to say something that would make the weight of it all lighter, but he knew better. Some things were too heavy for words. Instead, he picked up his coat and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at his touch, then slowly relaxed. "You should rest," he murmured. "I'll take care of him." But Evelyn shook her head. "No, you've done enough. You shouldn't have to carry this too." Her voice cracked, but her tone was steady, resolute. "He carried me across half this country, telling everyone I was his wife, his treasure. But to him, I was just something to chain down." Clint knelt beside the fallen man, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. No pulse. The truth of death was final, but it wasn't satisfying. It never was. He sighed deeply, his heart heavy, not for the man, but for what he'd done to her. For what she'd had to become to end it. When he looked back, Evelyn had moved to the barn door, staring out at the rain-washed darkness beyond. The wind had softened, and the horizon glowed faintly with the first hint of dawn. She looked smaller somehow, fragile but strangely free. "You should come inside," Clint said. "The storm's dyin'. My place is just up the ridge, you can warm up, get some rest." She turned to him, eyes glassy but firm. "You're kind, Clint. Too kind for what you just saw." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Evelyn hesitated, then walked back toward him, her boots silent against the wet wood. "You think this ends with him dead?" she asked quietly. "You think monsters like James live alone in the dark? He worked for men who do worse things, to women like me, to anyone who crosses them. They'll come looking for him. And when they do, they'll find you too." Clint's gut twisted. He'd seen enough trouble in his life to know she wasn't wrong. "Then I'll be ready," he said simply. But Evelyn shook her head. "No, you don't understand." She reached up and brushed his cheek lightly with her hand, her fingers cold but soft. "You gave me something I haven't had in years, choice. But choice has a cost." Clint caught her hand gently, his rough thumb tracing the rope marks on her wrist. "You don't owe me anything, Evelyn. You did what you had to." A faint, tired smile crossed her face. "Maybe. But you untied me, Clint. You didn't just free me, you set something in motion. I can't stay. Not here. Not anywhere near this." She stepped away, the lamplight catching the wet strands of her hair. Clint wanted to stop her, to tell her there was a place for her at his ranch, that she didn't have to face the world alone. But he saw in her eyes that she'd already made peace with leaving. Some wounds don't heal where they were made. The barn door creaked as she pushed it open. The early light poured in, soft and pale against the storm's fading edge. She turned one last time, her voice quiet but steady. "You'll tell them he came here looking for a fight. That you tried to stop him. Leave me out of it." Clint's throat tightened. "Where will you go?" She smiled faintly, a ghost of warmth touching her face. "Wherever the rain ends." And with that, she stepped out into the open field, the mist curling around her like smoke. The wind carried the faint scent of wild sage as her silhouette vanished beyond the ridge. Clint stood there for a long while, listening to the last drops of rain fall on the barn roof. When he finally looked back at the still body of James Hart, a chill ran through him. He remembered her words, "Untie me, I crave." At the time, he thought she meant freedom. But now, watching the place where she'd stood, he wasn't sure if what she craved was peace, or vengeance. Either way, the storm had passed. But Clint Maddox knew it had left something behind, something that would haunt him every time thunder rolled over the plains.